I am Maisabe Pugh, co-founder of Kitchen Peace Network and director of Gender Equality Network from Myanmar. I grew up in the beautiful mountains of Myanmar, then moved to the capital when I was 12 years old because of my episodes with malaria. That's where I work now, on violence and discrimination against the many ethnic people at the hand of the National Army. In fact, Myanmar has the longest running internal conflict in the world. 3 months ago, in October 14, I was abroad on a work-related trip when my husband, Patrick, was arrested. Why? I thought, why did the government arrest a man who, unlike me, is not an activist? He's a humanitarian delivering relief supplies to the members of the ethnic Kachin minorities. He's helping some of the 400,000 people in Myanmar displaced by the civil war. Yet Patrick was sent to a notorious jail where political prisoners are kept, and tonight, as I speak to you, he is still there, accused of defaming the chief of our military by posting a negative photo of him on Facebook. He did not do that, but I'm sure that's not really why he was arrested. Maybe I should not have been surprised, because in Myanmar, challenging the government and military authorities has been extremely dangerous, not just for those who did it, but also people they love. But my work to build peace among our ethnic groups requires me to speak out against injustice. Now, as the authorities try to silence me, Patrick is paying the price. Since the recent election, and now with the transition, my country has a chance to become a modern democracy after 50 years as a military dictatorship. But violence and the oppression of ethnic minorities and women have continued. In 2013, I joined several other civil society leaders to publicly criticize the so-called 969 group of religious extremists who were pushing the idea that women must be controlled. Of course, I was targeted. We women are accused of being prostitutes and traitors. My photo and phone number were published on Facebook, so I began to get threatening calls and messages. As the leader of Gender Equality Network, I have reasons for hope as well as pessimism. Sure, we have far to go. For example, at the Union Peace Conference taking place this week to discuss our country's political and social transition, only 15%, that's 15%, of the delegates are women. Yet more women are needed at the table if people truly want to understand and change conditions in a country where soldiers routinely face no investigation after raping or even killing ethnic minorities, women. That's why my group is proposing a strong law to say that you cannot threaten women, you cannot beat them, you cannot violate their bodies. It's time for change, and with time we will prevail. But it won't be easy because peoples are complex. My family is an example. I love my father, a respected Burmese doctor, an ethnic majority man who married to a beautiful Kachin woman from the rural area, where he worked day and night to help people in need, listening to their pain, healing as he was able. Yet when I decided to marry a Kachin man, my dad was greatly disappointed and angry with me for not choosing a Burmese husband who he said would, of course, be superior, more intelligent. In fact, my father was so upset that he didn't speak to me for 10 years. Even when I had 2 daughters, he didn't soften. But when I had a son, that made a difference. He brought me back into our family. For my father and me, that was 10 years loss. But then, that's only 1 decade out of a lifetime of work.
Well, you can imagine what it's been like for the last week, spending time with Pew Pew, as we call her, as she calls herself. The first day we were together, we took a long walk. And we talked about some of my experiences as a mother with a daughter in crisis, and how I made the decision to keep on doing the work, and your decision to be here and to keep on doing the work, even with Patrick in prison. Those are tough, tough decisions to make. There are so many sacrifices that the 16 women who are here with us this week not have made, but are making. And you can't know that when we sit here in our beautiful clothes, but my admiration grows with every minute that I'm with you. This is Lilia Aguiar, and she's a former member of parliament and vice leader of the Labour Party caucus, president of Proyecto MX, a pro-democratization think tank, activist, former state representative in Chihuahua, long champion of women's and indigenous rights, government accountability, security reform. Oh, you all, Mexico needs a lot of help. And here is the woman who's doing it, including measures to combat violence against women and investigate the cases of the disappeared, and you'll tell us more
and
about
a former
that.
student of this school.
Oh, please, thank you. How did I leave that off? Former student here at the Kennedy School. And in the middle, Olga Bogomolets, who ran for president of Ukraine in 2014. She's currently a member of the parliament. She is a very highly, highly respected medical doctor, long string of medical doctors in your family, and deep, deep roots in the leadership of Ukraine, in fact, in Russia, and very well-known folk singer in Ukraine. Aha. And then Huda Shafiq She's a member of the Task Force for the Engagement of Women in South Sudan and Sudan. Will you tell us more about that in a minute? Advising the Sudanese government on how to strengthen that country's peace process that's going on now. She leverages her decades of experience in this community peace building and women's rights, as well as what she learned at Columbia University's Human Rights Program. This woman's spectacular. You will be, by the way, you will be at some point the president of Sudan.
I will.
You will, okay.
I will.
Yeah. As my grandmother would say, I feel it in my bones, you know? And Suzanne Aref Marouf, founder of a women's empowerment organization, as well as the deputy chair of the Kurdistan Women's Business Association. Suzanne is the former Sustainable Development Advisor to the Kurdish government, and she's currently the leader of a large civil society coalition collaborating with the central Iraqi government on the women, peace, and security strategy. That's a phrase known in the field to really talk about inclusive security, right? We're going to have a conversation here. I just can't stand panels. I think they're the least effective way to communicate possible. So we're going to relax and spend a few minutes with you just talking about what our experiences have been in different countries, our personal experiences, what we've seen with other women. You'll, I'm sure, be giving us an inside look at the conflicts, and then we're going to have questions, and then Apuk from South Sudan will give us what in my tradition would be called the benediction, the blessings at the end, and tell us your story a bit. So I open this up now to anyone.
Can I start?
Feel free.
Good evening, everybody. It's a great honor to be here in this hall and to have possibility to talk to you. I'm Olga from Ukraine, and probably I'm not talking about 16 leaders, women who are here in this hall, but asking to all of you who are here, can you imagine that in your city, in your peaceful, beautiful city, you will have huge violence or dead people laying around you? A few years ago, I could not imagine that in my beautiful city, the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, which is located in the center of Europe, we will have so huge violence and we will have war. When 1 million people, Ukrainian citizens, come out to the streets just to protest for violence, for beaten few dozens of students, they were terribly beaten. Journalists, dozens of them, doctors, men and women, all of them. If you can imagine, on the 2 days of February, just in 2 days, we have 2,000 wounded, hardly wounded people, and 100 who were killed. We have, it seems to me, a video. Yeah. If we can put on a screen this video. This video, you see the Central Hotel on the Krещатик Street? The name of the hotel is Ukraine. And these are 16 dead bodies of young boys who have no weapons, who died in my arms. And this here you can see hundreds of doctors who just came when I wrote in Facebook that please come, because people need help. And in 1 hour we created a hospital in the central lobby of the hotel, and we have dozens of hospitals in the library, in the hotel, on the street, in the conservatory hall. My face is a little bit white because I wasn't sleeping for 3 days. And when something is happening around you, you cannot understand what's going on, why the whole world is not reacting on the violence which is happening in front of you. And you see these dead bodies the whole day they were laying. On that day, 100 young boys were killed. And we were singing when the bodies were bringing out from the hotel in the evening. That day changed all my life. Before that, I was a happy woman, raising 4 kids, being an academic professor of medicine, running my business. But afterwards, I just cannot work anymore as a doctor in my country. And 1 year later, I was in a city hall, and it was a group of women who were waiting for me. And they come to me, and they told me, Dr. Olga, we are mothers of those boys who died on your arms 1 year ago. We have a question for you. I felt like my heart stopped beating, bringing me back to that day when, as a highly qualified doctor, I have no chance to save lives because snipers were doing so good job, 1 bullet to a brain, 1 bullet to a heart, and just in 1 second there is no life. And I was staying in front of these ladies. I knew that I have no answers on their questions. They lost their sons, their husbands. And they were watching at me, and they asked me, did our boys, when they were dying, was it painful for them? And I was hugging them, trying to not to cry, telling them that they went out in heaven with peace, with no pain. I wasn't lying, because snipers were doing a really very good job. Can I be any more doctor in a country where I was qualified to save lives, to have no possibility to save these lives? That's turned my life. Today in Ukraine, we have more than 6,000 already killed. 1,500,000 internal refugees. Dozens, thousands handicapped and wounded. Dozens, thousands orphans. Dozens, thousands widows. And mothers who are waiting for the answer. Can we tolerate any more violence? What can we do to stop the violence in the world?
Thank you, Olga. Thank you. Thank you.
I can start after Olga because I have the same thing on mothers, and I want to tell you. First, good evening. I'm really honored, and it's a great opportunity for me to be here. I am a woman from Iraq, from Kurdistan region. It's the safe haven for most of Iraqi peoples who moved to live in a peace. Kurdistan region has the population of close to 5 million of Kurds, but we are not living only as a Kurds. There's the Arab, Shia, Sunni, there is the Christian, Turkmen, Yazidis, Shabak, everyone who moved to live in a peace. We have about 2.6 million of Iraqi displaced to live in a peace. And we have 250,000 of Syrian refugees who living in Kurdistan. In spite of all the development in Kurdistan, discrimination and violence against women persist in the legislation, political and social life. And of course, with the recent conflict of ISIS on the country, it affected badly, especially on women's situation, economically,
politically, socially. So their life being changed. Many women being abducted by ISIS, like more than 4,000 of Yazidi women being abducted. There's some of them find their way to just to run away, and there's many other kinds of other violence that been created with this crisis of raping, sexual harassment, and the phenomena of child marriage as a protection. My story as a woman, as a mother, again, the cultural norm and traditional norm that affecting on women. This is my story, which starts when I lost my husband in a car accident. I was only 27 years old with 3 children. I found that I lost my identity and dignity because I've been held in my parents' house for 8 years. It's like I'm in prison. This is to protect the family's honor, to not be shamed, to not be affected by their reputation. But for me, I lost contribution. I don't have anything to do. And it was very difficult for me to continue my life in this way. With every time that I'm challenging that I cannot continue my life in this way. And this is the problem, that how I'm feeling that like I lost the contribution, I'm very aggressive, I'm very bad mom for my children. So I became useless in this life. Why I'm living? Why I have to continue my life in this way? Even not only I'm useless, but I'm also negative and affecting badly on my children. So this is how even the suicide thought came to my mind. So what I have to do, I have to end my life because this is the best solution. I'm living now because I'm the mother. If they lost their father, but still they have their mother. But when I found myself, I'm useless and I'm very bad with them. So this is how I came to the point that I have to end my life. This is how I decide to suicide myself. But first, I tried to face my father, to talk with him, because I don't have any other thing to lose. So this is how I have to face it and to tell him that I took this decision. I don't have any other choices. And he has to respond to his society and neighbors, and even he has to respond to my children. Why their mother suicide herself? Who is responsible for that? So this is the point how I was able to convince my father for my freedom, for my independency, and to gain a new life. This is how start my journey. And I decide to support women, especially widows. You know, in Iraq, it's the widows' country. There's 4 million of widows in Iraq with the same life that I face. So this is how I decide to help widows, to help women to be independent, to improve their skills. This is what we did in the organization that I established in 2004 for enhancing women's role in Iraq society. What we did, like through this organization, we supported 50,000 of women to raise their skills. We secured thousands of women from violence. We changed law of marriages. It was 14 years with the judge's permission. We worked with the religious leader, Islamic Union, and they declared a fatwa that female genital mutilation, it's not related to Sharia, it's cultural practice. And many other things, many other achievements in this organization. So this is the changes. When I reached the point of to gain a new life, I said, there is no anymore, there is no impossible in my dictionary. So everything with challenging, with trying, so we can succeed. And this is how I changed the point. In a point I was ashamed for the family, but nowadays I'm at the point of proud of all the family. And when I succeed, this is not affected on me only as a woman, but affected on my children and on thousands and thousands of women. So this is how I want to change, and I want a strong country that depends on the contribution of men and women.
You know, that's so interesting because we have this research that, first of all, from your story, which is so personal, and there are a lot of us who can relate to your story. There are more people here than you might imagine who have felt that hopelessness. But the research says that, in fact, there's a correlation between the violence at home and the violence in the society as a whole, but also the way women are treated and whether or not women feel like they can really become part of the solution, be out there in public, whether they're marginalized, whether you can't go from being locked up in a home, confined to a home, to suddenly be at a peace table where you're deciding about, what the peace agreement will include for the communities, et cetera. So there have to be these steps that you've been creating for other widows in Iraq. And it's hard sometimes. People start thinking, oh, these poor victims, and good for Susan that she's working to help these victims. But actually what you're doing is creating a more secure Iraq by bringing in the whole population of the country as a resource.
Exactly. This is the wasting of resource, and this is not affecting only on women's life, but in all the nation, because this restriction of education, of economic participation, this is not affecting only on women, but on the nation. How, like, if they keeping women inside doors. So this is why important, we cannot reach a peace without women participation. If women, they are not on the table of peace negotiation. So this is how we can fight extremism through women empowerment, because the marginalization brings extremism. We have all those widows, we have all the kids that begging on streets. So it is very easy to be involved with extremism, with terror group. So this is how, if we can work with women to improve their skills, to provide them with opportunity, to have more women leaders on the table for peace agreements, this is how we can change the country. And yet still women's voice are not heard enough. And this is reflect on all the peace agreements. It doesn't reflect their interest and their needs. So this is why we want more and more women leaders on the table, in a high position, in decision center, to change this country and to have more women and women engagement.
Thanks for making that connection a lot clearer. Huda in Sudan, Lilia in Mexico, I'm sure that something's going on in your heads as you listen to both Olga and Suzanne.
I just want to stand up and lead because
I want to tell Susan that she's not only proud for her family, but she's proud for all of us as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
And it's because of that, because hearing all these women and all these women that I have the opportunity to meet during these days who are facing conflict has put me in the situation of asking myself, what is Mexico doing in a panel, in a conversation like this? Because Mexico is not the usual suspect for international peace and security. At least most of you or many of you should think that. But the truth is that in my reflection, Mexico is facing, yes, not a war. Iraq is the first war I heard when I was a kid. Probably not an internal war like it happened in South Sudan, but Mexico is suffering a lot of violence. And just some numbers. In Mexico, 1 woman is killed every 4 hours. Every 4 hours. And in the period of time of 2007 to 2014, we had more killings than in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. We have, in that same period of time, 26,000 people forcibly disappeared. And talking about mothers and what I have learned from these amazing, incredible women who are here and on the public is how I can tell a story of another mother, a Mexican one, who actually her name is Cristina. She is from the state of Guerrero. She has a son called Benjamin. Benjamin, who was, at the time he disappeared, 18. Benjamin, who escaped the violence, the economic violence put on him, who was forced to work for crime, picking poppy seeds in the mountains of Guerrero, and then had finally the opportunity to go to the university to be a teacher and help his community. One day, Benjamin was going to a demonstration to Mexico City with another student's friend, and he was stopped by the municipal police in Guerrero and disappeared with another 42 students. You know the story. 42 students in Guerrero who were took by the police with the knowledge of the state police and probably the army in Mexico. And we still, 1 year and months later, we don't know where they are. But Cristina, her mother, still doesn't know where he is, but she is looking for him. At the time Cristina heard about the disappearance of Benjamin, she didn't speak Spanish. She was so poor that she listened about the disappearing of her son, 1 month later, because she needed to wait until someone came up in the mountain and tell her. And Cristina has shown us in Mexico how you stand up against violence. She learned Spanish, but not only learned Spanish. Now she's one of the people who represent the parents of the 43 students disappeared in Mexico. And she has told the president directly, loud and clear, I'm not leaving Mexico City until you give me my boy alive. And she has inspired not only a lot of us, because I have participated in these demonstrations as well, but the whole country, Ambassador Hunt. The whole
listen,
country.
I've seen the pictures, like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people in the square with the big pictures of Benjamin, right? I mean, it is, you know, it is extremely powerful. And you think about what this one woman did, but you know what, Lilia, it wasn't just Christina. I mean, I don't know how it is that you bonded with her or took up her cause, but I've also seen the pictures of you know, speaking out at the parliament, speaking to, you know, various task forces, you out in front. You are a person who inspires me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, do you mind, like, how did you get into this? Like, what's a nice girl like you doing in, yeah, I mean, like, what happened that you became this voice?
It actually has a very funny start, and it's a confession that I hope it can stay among us because it's kind of embarrassing. When I was a child, I didn't grow up with my parents because my parents were activists.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a house where the sons and daughters of activists were taken care of with another 28. And I didn't like to take baths.
That's your secret?
Yes. And it was because it was so hard. We didn't have any running water.
Yeah.
We didn't have any services.
Yeah.
And I needed to walk 5 kilometers to get water and then 5 kilometers to bring the water. And then just 28 people were taking a bath in that water.
Yuck.
So I talked to my mama because I have been a negotiator since I'm a kid. And I said, Mama, if you let me not take a shower every day,
A bath?
I promise,
a bath? Yeah.
I promise to you that I'll go to Harvard. I'll
Check.
become a president of Mexico.
Will be checked soon.
Well, yeah, I'm already speaking at the forum, so this
right.
is for presidents. So I'm in the path of just watch me.
Right.
And I'm going to overthrow this system, this government, and I'm going to bring running water to your house.
Yeah.
We did take running water to our community, and that's how I became an activist and then a politician. And I relate to the 43 students because I am a believer that human rights and the respect to them is for everyone. And I believe in justice. And I was really active. I was the voice of this movement inside the government. And I not only fought for a committee to seek for justice for these 43 students and their families,
Yeah.
but also for the governor of Guerrero to resign. We got that. But you know what I have discovered, Ambassador Hunt, and what I got in return? Violence. Because women, like Pew Pew said, like all of these women know, we get violence when we stand up against violence. And violence that was not only put against me, but it was also put against my family. But what I have learned, not only from my parents, and all the people I have the luck to know, is that you need to stand up and keep going because the task is not yet finished.
And when you say violence, you're talking like death threats.
That's
right. Or you were kidnapped, weren't you?
I was kidnapped. I learned about the perils of being in leadership since a young age. I was a state representative in Chihuahua from 2004 to 2007, and I was kidnapped the first time because I fought really hard to look for a third committee for the women who disappeared in Juarez, and I made the chief of the police really angry. So he decided that it was a good idea to just scare me a bit. He didn't, and I'm not scared yet.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be. I don't think you're going to be. So we have Christina in the mountains. Her son disappeared, or is disappeared, And then we have Lilia, who takes up the cause. I mean, it is an extraordinary story. It reminds me of your work, Olga, your work, Suzanne, Huda. Huda, I know that you've been part of this task force. I introduced you as part of. This is another example of women coming together. Can you tell us more about it?
Yes, sure. I just want to say that, unlike Lilia, I have a very boring childhood, not exciting at all. I wasn't accepted to Harvard. Well, apparently I didn't have enough working experience, I'm just saying, for them. But I'm coming for my PhD. So I grew up, I'm from this country who was the largest country in Africa, Sudan. And because of the very long war that have been happening between the North and the South, it became two countries just recently, Sudan and South Sudan. And unfortunately, the conflicts continued in the two countries internally, like in Nuba Mountains and Darfur in the north, and it's still happening since 2013 in the south. I didn't grow up in a conflict zone. I didn't experience all that. Relatively, I had a very protective, privileged childhood. So the things I took for granted, sisters from South Sudan and from other parts of Sudan didn't have. And when I get to go to my undergraduate school, I started to know. I mean, I experienced the injustice in the society about their perception of women and all that in different ways, but then when it came for me to know that people are actually just being killed because of their skin of color, or just because of their religion, or just because of where they were born and their ethnic tribe, it's just changed me. And I can't really tell why I'm doing that. It's just I can't ignore the facts that's happening. I can't just ignore the information I knew. And I feel that my friends who grew up there and my sisters and brothers deserve the same services and basic needs I had just because I was a city girl. I mean, children in Nuba Mountains at the age of my niece are not going to schools because they are ethnically targeted. And then I started to know that it's not only because of being Arab or African, Muslim or Christian, it's more than that. It's continuous political instability, and it's also a lot of struggle over power and wealth, and most and above of all, it's the exclusive country that we have been living in, and the lack of inclusivity by not having women specifically, and that's what I would like to focus in. So, as I still consider myself from Sudan and South Sudan, I ended by joining the task force that you just mentioned, Ambassador. And it's a very interesting group. You will really like knowing us and the work we're doing. We come from Sudan and South Sudan, and of course it's a collective result of a long movement of women in different institutions. So what actually we do is that we bug and stuck the decision makers and tell them what they need to do in the peace processes in Sudan and South Sudan. And by that I mean that we meet with them, we just follow them wherever they're convening their meetings, we provide specific recommendations about how this process needs to be, how the process needs to have at least 50% of women, and how we need to stop the conflict now, start delivering aid for people so we can have everyone on the table. Because why is that? And I mean, why women? Because we have done that so many times before. We have been down that road so many times, and it didn't work out. People just realize it. I mean, it's so obvious. You have been by yourselves deciding on our lives, and you didn't succeed. So, as a result of our work, that recognition started to happen. And
now let me get it straight. You're saying that the women have been excluded, and you're saying, hey, guys, you know, you've been trying, you've had a lot of time to try this. It's not working, so let's get the women into the mix, right?
True.
And,
Correct.
And you said you're starting to get some traction now? Or?
Yes, so actually in different ways. So for example, now the current peace process that's happening in Sudan, we call it the national dialogue because it's an opportunity that's raising to have everyone on the table really trying to find the comprehensive solution for what's happening. And the focus so far has been only on political parties and armed groups. No civil society, no women, even within the political parties, no women from all the parties, no civil society, and only specific stakeholders. So, just to cut this long story short, what we did is as I said, we linked them with the people on the ground's needs. So we know what the people what the people need on the ground, because we go to the ground and we ask the people what they need. So as women, we are agents that really can reflect the need of the wider community. So recently, for example, are you okay? Yeah. Recently, for example, I was in the borders between Sudan and South Sudan, and I spoke with decision makers, women selling teas and food on the street, women leaders, and civil society. And more than 90% of the people thought that they need women because they lost all the trust in their political representatives, and they believe that women can really be their voices, women can really reflect their needs, and women have the enough capacity. It's not that only they have to be there, they have the enough capacity. So that's, for me, that was like, wow, people in the national level need to know that. And that's one of the things that we're doing. So one of the results of all this insistent work we have doing by meeting them and informing them with that is the numbers of the seats for women increased in the current committees of the national dialogue. So it's like, it was like 4, can you believe it? And now they are asking us to provide them with like more than 200 names for women out of 700. And that's not enough for us, of course.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're going for more.
Wow. Yeah, that kind of, all these years later, I mean, these decades later since the clip that Fareed Zakaria was talking about, in terms of my work in Bosnia, where I said, these women aren't being included. And you get all these warlords, they're all putting their guns under the table, but here you are, and you're getting so much more traction, Huda and every one of you, than I was seeing. I mean, this is really, really encouraging to me. I know it may seem like it's happening very, very slowly, and it's true, but when you talk about such a cultural change, a difference in the mindset, it is slow, but it takes staying in there, just not giving up. Just like you said, Lily, I'm not going away. I'm going to open this up now for some questions. There are 4 mics, and there's someone at the microphone. Are you standing at a microphone, or are you just sitting down? No, you're sitting down. You're standing up. Okay.
Thank you, Ambassador Hunt, and thank you, women leaders, for sharing your stories with us.
And I'm supposed to say that you need to do 3 things. Identify yourself, remember that a question ends with a question mark, and keep it brief.
My name is Aurora Lockenauer. I'm a first-year master's student at the Fletcher School, and I've had the privilege of working with the inclusive security class these last couple of weeks. Many of the arguments for the need to include women in peace processes depend on stereotypes, that women are maternal, that they are peace-loving, and again, that they're more willing to compromise to get to an agreement. While these arguments get women seats at the table today, I worry that they are reinforcing stereotypes that will make it hard for women in your countries to take on other roles in the future. Are you comfortable with using arguments based on the special characteristics of women, or should we switch to an argument or a dialogue that women deserve to be at the peace table in political dialogue because of their roles as individuals and citizens in their countries rather than based on gender?
Okay, great question, Aurora. And so to restate, do we need to be, or is it important, I should say, is it important to think of women in terms of, they have these special qualities, this certain life experience, whether they're born with it or not, they're different in, not all women, right? Not all men, right? But they bring this specialness, or is it should we switch over from that and say, you know, it's just better to have everyone able to come to the table? Is that an okay way to say it?
Yes, thank
you. So anyone, keep your answers quite short. See that clock up there? Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to go until about 7:15. So you've got to keep your answers really short. What's your opinion on that and why?
I think with women participation, it's not necessarily to say that they have to be like a new characters for women, because everything is practice. But the problem when they healing women, keeping them inside doors. So of course they don't have any experience how they can immediately come to power. So this is the problem. They have to be in the process with education, with work, with political parties. So this is the system, how they can be in the position and get all the experience. And when we are saying women to be on the table, because we want the two perspectives of women and men to be reflected in the decisions, because nowadays we in our society, all the decisions taken by men, there's no any women's perspective. This is why the decision is not serving women and not taking their needs.
Right.
I just want to say very quickly, I agree with you that generalization is never all true, but it's a fact. It's not only their rights, it's the added value that they bring for the table. For example, when Sudan and South Sudan were dividing, we were going together, me and Apuk literally, to the meetings, providing the sample of the Sudan that we wanted, crossing all our divisions. So it's just, I know that it's the patriarchal society that we're living in, but for now we're going to stress on our value, we're going to bring everyone on the table, and then we're going to fix the patriarchal society, and then after that we're going to say that we don't have to stress on the gender, we're just going to say everyone.
Okay, so let me recap, and then because I want to capture this, and then Olga. Okay, so Suzanne, you're saying, if I'm understanding, that you've got to have women adding their perspective, but it's also true that from where they are now to getting to the table, they're going to have a lot of experiences that men wouldn't have to have. So you've got to focus on women differently from how you would focus on men to get them to the table, so that then they can make a balancing contribution based on their life experience. And if they're not there, no one's going to be speaking out on behalf of women. So that's important. You got to have their voices represented. And then let me see if I understood, Huda. You're saying, well, your experience is that with Sudan and South Sudan, being part of this task force that went across the lines has made a very big difference in your representing those values. And maybe you get to a point where it's just people as people, but for right now your experience is that there's a difference in what women are doing. Do I have that? Yes. Fair? Okay. Now, Olga, you're going to jump out of your seat if I don't. And then Lilia.
I just would like to say that half of the population in the world is women. And of course, we all here are human beings. What that means for you, for me, being a human being means being human. Men and women can accept this different. What is the main difference between men and women is that God gave to the woman possibility to bring the life, to give for a human being this life. And a woman will be ready to save lives, to go for negotiations, because the human being life for her is the main value. So she'll be much more ready for compromise. That means that women all over the world should be those persons who are responsible and who are decision makers, together with men.
Okay, so you hear more of the first point of view from Olga, that women actually, they are the ones who give birth, and therefore they are going to have a particular investment in maintaining that life, and therefore will compromise more. And Lilia, how do you answer?
Just really quickly, because I think you are asking if we're comfortable saying that we need to be sitting on the table because we are more maternal and we're like more caring, but that is not the issue. The issue is that we are the other half and we have a different perspective. And I'm just going to close with something that Ambassador Hunt always says, but I have lived myself. There are women there who are able to be on the table. The thing is that they never let us sit. And when we sit there, we talk, and they think that what we're saying is not important. So affirmative actions have built democracies like this one, like the one in Mexico, as bad as it is. So we need affirmative actions, not because we give birth only or because we're more caring, it's because we're capable to do it.
Okay, so you're hearing, yes, Aurora, thank you.
Thank you so much for all your answers.
Yeah, it was a great question. And by the way, that question will spark ongoing conversations around a lot of dinner tables. You know, so that was a really important question. And you heard a great deal of nuance in those answers, too. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Patricia Araujo Henderson. I'm with the School of Education here at Harvard. My question is towards that end. Education in conflict areas is known to bring a sense of normalcy to children and communities and contributing to social cohesion and collaboration in peace conflict. And my question to you is, education can also be used as a conduit to continue violence and to promoting hatred between children. I'd like to know is, how do you see the role of education, especially in countries that have been through long wars, and how do you see this as a tool or as a means for peace building and peacekeeping?
Right, education can be used either way, as a negative, as a positive. And does anyone here have anything that you want to say about that? You don't have to. We could say, sorry.
I would just like to say that it's so important what you are talking about, because we even couldn't imagine what those kids have there in their mind.
Yeah.
When they grew up in the family, when their mother is crying every day, explaining who killed his father, or his grandfather, or his brother, what decisions they are making, and they when grew up, what they are doing, taking weapons. I just, a few months ago, I was taking part in the big celebration where we have very small kids, 6-7 years, and they were getting their first pagons, how you call this? Military school.
Yeah.
For young boys who are just 6-7 years. And I was talking, shaking their hands in Kiev, and I was asking whom you would like to be. One said, I would like to become a chief of police. Another one said, I want to be a general. Third one said, I want to be a marshal. And the fourth said, I want to be a jet pilot. I want to bring the atomic bomb. He's keeping this in his mind. Because what's going on with the propaganda, and for example, what we are going through right now in Ukraine, even not having been a long time in this conflict, when Putin's propaganda is telling people that Ukrainians are crazy, killing people eating people, making more and more aggression, everything is lie. But people started to be afraid. And keeping them educated in peace is the most important thing when we are talking about the future. And I just would like to come back to talking about women. They're here, you see, women who can talk, who are not afraid to talk, even they were oppressed. But we have millions of women who have violence at home, who are killed, who are afraid to talk. For example, widows in Ukraine, mothers, are talking about their kids who were killed. In Russia, they are keeping quiet. They are afraid to talk. Because then they knew that there is not only violence inside the country, inside of the family. Ukraine wanted to be independent, peaceful country because in 1993 we gave up our atomic weapons to show to the whole world that we want to be a peaceful, independent country. And on the basis of the signed agreement, Budapest Agreement, when United States of America, England, and Germany was giving us guarantees to have peace and territorial integrity. Today, Putin making violence not for one family, not for one child, not for one mother. He's making violence to the whole world, changing the world order, trying to explain that he can do what he wants to do, to take off Crimea, to make war in the East. We want to be peaceful, independent country. Each family wants to be peaceful, independent family. And we had to teach our children. And that's why we are here. And that's why you are here. Because I really believe that what was going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Sudan, in Mexico, is happening not because someone is giving command to shoot. Not only because the snipers are taking their weapons. Not only police is taking people in Mexico, because the million in this same moment are keeping silence. They just close their mouths, close their eyes, and they're trying to look like nothing is happening. So we don't have to tolerate this, and we have to teach our children to care about the world and the peace in the world.
And if I can just take it from there, I think we can't only rely on formal education in such situations. We also need to pay attention for informal channels for education, like civil society organizations, community-based organizations, religious institutions even. They're all serving very well now for example, in Sudan. It's in just like spreading the concept of peace and related topics.
And worldwide, the civil society organizations are dramatically they're led by women in dramatic numbers. Yes?
I want to
Okay.
add it that, again, empowering women to fight extremism. Because if we have, I'm talking about my country, the number of widows and other women divorced and other illiterate women. So women without identity, without dignity, how they can raise a good generation, a nation. So this is education, it's very important, but again, we have to have, because there's a big gap between women and their children and education. And again, we have the stereotype, the culture norms on education. Again, like the girl, she has to help her mother in the house, and the boy with his father, and he's engineer, and she is taking care about babies. So this is how we are educating our kids. And this is also the case of women. So this is how I'm saying, we have to have a civic education and also empowering women to have a good and strong generation.
Yeah, I'm going to move us on. Patricia, we could go on for hours about this. It's an excellent question. Yes, sir.
Hi. I want to, first of all, thank you all for being here and sharing your amazing stories. My name is Jesus Reyes. I'm a first-year MPP here at the Kennedy School, and I'm originally from the state of Zacatecas in Mexico. My question is specifically to Lilia, but of course, open. So, being from Zacatecas, we know a little bit about violence. We've had gun violence, we've had kidnappings, we've had everything that the rest of the country has had. But this violence, even though it's increased, it happened before 2007. We had other types of violence. We had economic violence. We had lack of opportunities. We had those violences that led to those more horrific, more forceful types.
May I ask you to speak more slowly?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I mean, I'm catching it, but I think there may be others for whom it's difficult.
So that lead to those more forceful types of violence. I think in Mexico we cannot wait for another 43 students to disappear. We can't afford to, and we need to do something now. But in my past experience, when I go to Zacatecas and try to organize people to get involved, to do something, we encounter, apathy and lack of trust that something can actually be done in a country like Mexico. So my question specifically is, how do we involve young people, but specifically women, into starting to organize and try to push against these walls and try to go against, what the government perhaps is doing.
Right.
How do you do
yes.
that?
Lilia, can
Yes.
you in 2 minutes give him some ideas?
2 minutes.
Just solve Mexico in 2 minutes, would you please?
I'm gonna try to be short.
You are going to be short.
The thing is that, as you know, women in Mexico are leaders grassroots, especially in deep in the south and up in the north. The thing is that we need to change the institution, specifically the law, in order for women to be able to get up. And not only, and I am part of a political party, not only those who are in this bubble of the political parties, who are politicians who have been called the stomach of the beast, but those who are actually have the pulse of the communities and help them get up and be in formal authority positions. That's the first one. And second, we need to recognize and we need to push. There's something that doesn't exist in Mexico, and that is social control. I don't know how to say, but society is not pushing government to accept that we're not at war with another country, probably we're not in civil war. But being from Zacatecas, as I know, being from Chihuahua, and there's people here from Mexico City, from Guadalajara, that we are in a war against crime. And we need to do something to bring peace. But the first thing that we need to accept is that crime has been deep inside, rotten the society and the government, and we need to stop it. And for that, we need to speak up.
And there are very, very powerful examples, to your point, about how societies actually make systemic changes that allow women to come into that space. But it also takes the mentoring, women like these who go home and they identify X number of other women who identify X number of women. So both have to happen at the same time. A quota or some other systemic change, and then the encouraging of the women. And by the way, Huda, I was telling you back in the green room about the conversation I heard last night from some Iraqi women, Suzanne, who were saying, we want to start a task force, where we learn from the women from Sudan and South Sudan. And I know that you already have a lot going on. And it's just a matter of, but it's very helpful to exchange these strategies all across the women you see on the stage, but also thousands of others with whom we've worked. It's a very, very powerful network. Thank you for your question. And we have one last, and then we will wrap up. Yes.
Marilce Rodriguez Garcia. I'm an alumna of the Kennedy School, the Mid-Career Program, and a member of the New England Alumni Association. Thank you very much for your stories. They're very different, but there's a common thread through all of them, and they're very humbling. They're also, to me, a little frustrating because I sit here thinking, what could someone like me do? Is there a role for people from here or other parts of the world in your individual battles?
Thank you.
Or do we just stand on the sidelines and say, you go, girl?
Thank you. And I'm going to say, if you have an idea, see that clock up there? You have less than 1 minute to express it. That's going to be 1, that's going to be 2 minutes, yes. Oh, you fight it out.
Okay. You go ahead.
About Ukraine. What we need right now is to bring back the world order, just to stop the Russian aggression, to give possibility to our country to be independent country and to control, to ruin the corruption from inside our country, to build new, really independent, good country, which you all, I'm absolutely sure, you will come to visit Ukraine, you'll be surprised. Mm-hmm. How beautiful is it? And how beautiful are the people. Right now, we need the support from outside. First, to to stop the aggression, to stop the enemy, which we have right now in the face of Putin. How? Not with the weapons, but the economical sanctions. Not because I want Russian people to live bad. No, I want them to be happy, to live in peace, to have a good future. But we have to bring back integrity of Ukraine. And those who don't want to be a leader of human being human, those who thinks that he can be a leader because he has the best army, he has new weapons, he's bringing more and more money to support this, it's not being a leader in a new world. It's being a dictator. And he has to go in the past, just first give us back Crimea and stop the war. And economical sanctions and support from United States is very, very important. And support to internal processes, controlling each penny which is giving us a support from United States to Ukraine. These are just two ways how you all can support. And I'll be very happy when I'll be going back to Ukraine that I will bring not only the cold, which I caught here in Boston, that I bring back your support. And you'll be reading about Ukraine. You will not believe in the dirty propaganda. You will check it yourself. Just come to Ukraine. It's safety, beautiful country. We are waiting for you and your support.
And yes, and one of the things Olga was saying to me before we walked in, she said, I want people to begin by learning the truth. Just begin by finding out what's happening there. It sounds very, very simple, but it is the start. Yes, and you have the last word, Suzanne.
Yeah. Thank you. There's many things to do and to support. First, your solidarity. Second, you know, now in Kurdistan, there's, like, as I said, there's a big development. Like with all the cultural norms, you can see women involved in military, in Peshmerga, fighting ISIS, women in police. Like the number of women with girls, boys in universities is the same. But you cannot see women on decision positions. So it will be good if find link of research, studies, especially with Harvard University, to link with other universities in Kurdistan. We have Kurdistan University. So it will be good to focus on studies on women issue, on women leadership. This is very important. And of course, as country, as US support, we need continuous support and more support. And this political support, it is very important to have women peace agenda on our government agenda.
So I believe what you're saying then is make your voice heard politically, and this crowd knows how to do that. All right, and you have 15 seconds now.
30 seconds. I would say, beside advocacy and academic research on the issues related to inclusive security and women, peace and security, you can always be a support for organizations here in the States that support our work we're doing in the field. Like the Institute for Inclusive Security, you have been support most of the work that we are doing. So I'm sure you're a great resource for them. So that's just an idea.
Thank you. And yes, thank you. And now, as we draw to a close, an extraordinary woman, an extraordinary friend, an inspiration, Apuk Ayuel, senior diplomat, posted to the Embassy of South Sudan in South Africa. Ms. Ayuel was previously special assistant to the head of mission of the government of South Sudan to the United States.
Good evening. I come from South Sudan, the youngest country in the world, only 5 years old. And my country also has the youngest population, one of the youngest populations. Half of our population is under the age of 18, and nearly 2/3 is under the age of 30. South Sudan was born out of 5 decades of war in which we lost more than 5 million people. And so this young population only knows war and violence. Finally, in 2011, after five years ago, South Sudan gained independence, and we in the country had enormous hope for a future. But only then 2 years later, the guns started roaring again, and the blood started flowing yet again. My whole life has been shaped by conflict. I was born in Juba, South Sudan. I grew up in Khartoum, in Cairo, and then as a refugee in the United States, in Austin, Texas. In 1998, there was a famine in Sudan, and I saw a photo that changed my life. It was a photo of a girl child, emaciated. She had collapsed on an arid ground with her head down. And as I looked close at the photo, I saw a vulture stalking her. He was waiting for this young girl to take her last breath. And when I looked at it, I could imagine myself as that young child. I could imagine that she could have been my daughter, or maybe yours. And I could have been gripped by sorrow at that moment. I could have been paralyzed by despair. I was only 15 years old. But what I remember is that was my call to action. And for nearly 20 years from that moment, my life has become a search for peace. The independence that we gained in 2011, for us as South Sudanese, offered great opportunity for prosperity and development in a peaceful time, for the first time in 5 decades. I remember in 2013, in December, on the 13th, I brought my sisters for the first time to South Sudan, to Juba. And it was part of a massive return of hopeful diasporans. But 2 days after we arrived, tanks started rumbling through the streets, and guns were roaring yet again. That Christmas of 2013, instead of children walking through the streets like they do every year with candles in their hands singing Christmas songs, our streets in South Sudan were littered with bodies, dead bodies. And again, I was one of the lucky ones. I became a refugee again. I found myself in Nairobi, and as women, we had to act. As women, we had to stop this senseless war. And it was not the first time that we do it within the last 5 decades. I come from a long line of women who did the same things before to gain the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. Our women, in South Sudan, we have a saying that a woman has no tribe. So as a woman, should I be married, I'm a Dinka woman, should I be married to a Nwer woman, I would give birth to children who are Nwer. And so we came together as women. Some of us had the fresh pain of loss of their husbands, brothers, children, and relatives. And we came together across political divides and tribal divides. It was difficult. It was not easy. It was not easy. But at the end, we developed a manifesto for peace. And armed with that manifesto, we went as a group to the peace talks that were taking place in Addis Ababa. And we ambushed the men in the corridors. And one thing that struck them was that we had regardless of our divides, we had a consistent message. And our message was, we are demanding that you stop this senseless war. We are demanding peace, and we are demanding that women and civil society actors be included in the negotiations process. For us, we knew that an inclusive process was going to be the only means for us to have a sustainable peace. We also knew that without reconciliation, without restitution, the guns will roar yet again and the blood will flow yet again. It happened. We returned to war 2 years after independence because we didn't deal with the violence. We also know maybe I'll ask you a question. I told you earlier, we had a very young population. Like me, all our lives is violence. A society that only knows violence, how does it build anew? A society whose only resource, the most important resource, which is a human being, is traumatized and knows only conflict and violence. As women, we know that this society has to purge the violence. This society has to heal itself and reconcile itself in order to build a peaceful society. In the languages of South Sudan, my name, Apuk, means restitution.
May we each and every one remember you, Apuk, with that commitment to restitution, to coming together, to healing, Olga, right? To coming out of the confines, the margins, Suzanne, to being this voice, this powerful voice of a future, Huda, Lilia, to organizing with Christina those hundreds and hundreds of thousands who inspire the millions. Thanks to each one of you and the other 16 women who are with us, and thanks especially to those of you who've joined us in this forum and who've joined us online. It has been a great, great evening. Good night.